Hello, everyone out there in YouTube land. Let me make sure. Let me get this up. I'm also getting ready to go live on Instagram as usual. Okie dokie. Welcome, everyone. It's Makeda Valletta, also known as the Body Scientist. And I hope you all are doing well today. I am doing this as usual in two places, on YouTube and IG. So if you follow me on one and not the other, make sure you follow me on the other. So you can find me on YouTube, the Body Scientist 81, and IG, the _body_scientist. So for those of you who, some of you may not know about my background, I am a sports nutritionist. I'm an exercise physiologist. And today I want to talk about nutrition. Okay. So I'm a sports nutritionist, but I'm a nutritionist. Okay. Just the difference between a sports nutritionist and a nutritionist is that a sports nutritionist deals with activity, okay, as well. But I learned a lot in my graduate program at Columbia University because they were the only nutrition program in the country that did not take money from the food industry. So a lot of people are unaware of the fact that people talk about the drug company, the medical doctors. The medical programs in this country are funded by the drug companies. But a lot of people don't know that the nutrition programs are funded by the food companies, okay? And the food and the drug companies are the same companies. You have the Food and Drug Administration, right? And there's a lot of politics. I should have gotten, there's one other book that I should have here. Darn it. Oh, you know what? I should run. I'm going to run and get this book. Please excuse me. 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't edit videos, so that won't be edited out. So this is the book. This book right here, Food Politics, right? I love to show you guys books. Food Politics by Marion Nestle. How the food industry influences health and nutrition, okay? So I had to read this book when I was in graduate school. I read this book like in 2003. And this book was written by this woman. She was a professor of nutrition and food studies and public health and sociology at NYU, right? And she had, I can't remember if she worked for the FDA and the USDA or something, but the book really exposes and goes into depth about the politics behind food, literally, that the food companies give more money to politicians than the drug companies do, right? So people talk about the influence that the drug companies have. The food companies give more money to politicians than the drug companies do, okay? And so everything that we get told about what's healthy is all dictated by these food companies wanting to sell to you. Just like the drug companies want to sell to you. So the drug companies want to tell you if your cholesterol is over 200, it's too high, which is a myth. But they tell you if your cholesterol levels is over 200, it's too high, now you have to take this cholesterol medication. Oh, you have high blood pressure. Okay, so instead of telling someone to take some vitamin D, to do some deep breathing, to exercise, to get more omega-3 fats, to hydrate themselves, instead of telling people that, they just say, oh, take this blood pressure medication, right? Which causes all kinds of problems and you become addicted and then you take medicine for the side effects. The food companies do the same thing. So, and the main thing that I want to talk about is genetic modification. Because before I got into nutrition science and exercise physiology, before I got into that, I was actually a biotechnology major. And biotechnology is all about genetic engineering. And that's what I wanted to do. When I first went to college, I wanted to research the cures for genetic diseases. That was what I planned to do. Genetic diseases such as cancer, stuff like that, right? And so I knew about genetic engineering of food. Like people talk a lot about what they're doing to the animals, but they've been messing with the plants way before they started messing with the animals, okay? and it's a wrap with the plants. It's actually harder to find non-GMO plant food than it is to find non-GMO animal food, okay? But in the 90s, I read this book called, when I was in high school, I read this book called The Biotech Century, okay? And The Biotech Century, this book was talking about basically how genetic modification was going to take over everything. And now at 2019, 20 years later, it actually has. And more so than you guys understand, okay? So to get into, another book is Altered Genes, Twisted Truth, okay? Altered Genes, Twisted Truth. And this book is how the venture to genetically engineer our food has subverted science, okay? Subverted science, corrupted government, that's what I've been telling you, and systematically deceived the public. That's the title of this book. So once again, Altered Genes, Twisted Truth. How the venture to genetically engineer our food has subverted science, corrupted government, and systematically deceived the public. This is by Stephen M. Drucker. And I think this man was a scientist himself. Oh no, about the man who wrote this book. He is a public interest attorney who initiated a lawsuit that forced the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to divulge its files on genetically engineered foods. This exposed how the agency had covered up the warnings of its own scientists about the risk, lied about the facts, and then ushered these foods onto the market in violation of federal law. Okay, this is what's going on with our food that you guys have no idea about. He has served on the food safety panels at conferences held by the National Research Council and the FDA, presented lectures at numerous universities, met with government officials throughout the world, and conferred at the White House executive offices with a task force at President Clinton's Council on Environmental Quality. So this is who wrote this book. It's actually an attorney, okay? Talking about how the food industry is lying to people, how they're messing with the genetics, how they're just going against what the government is even telling them. And so when you see the things that I post about food, you know, like, and just my approach to nutrition is completely different than sports nutritionists, than even other nutritionists who have been educated by, we're in a nutrition program that was funded by the food industry, and they have also been taught those lies, and they recite them. So those of you who think that butter is bad for you, and you think that egg whites is good, and you think eating pork is bad, and you think that you're supposed to eat all these grains, and you think you're supposed to eat raw kale, all that's incorrect information, okay? All of it's incorrect information. Now, the thing that stopped me from wanting to be a scientist, because at first that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be in these laboratories, researching cures. But then when I started to realize the politics behind it and how, like, scientists get silenced and scientists get killed when they find certain things out and they want to speak the truth. A lot of scientists know the truth, but they can't speak it because they will end up missing, you know? And the practitioners a lot of times don't read the research. So a lot of people who are so-called practitioners don't read the research. And this is why you have to be very careful with who you get your nutrition advice from. There's a lot of people, especially a lot of trainers, and I always say this, trainers are not nutritionists. Remember that. Personal trainers and group fitness instructors are not supposed to be giving you nutrition advice. That is not their area of expertise. It's not. Nutrition is a serious field that takes a lot of studying. But even besides that, even if someone was educated in a regular nutrition program, there's a point where you can activate your critical thinking skills, right? And so to me, I really believe in traditional foods. I believe in eating the foods that our ancestors ate that kept them healthy for generations. It's only recently that people started having 1 and 2 and 3 kids. You know, if people have more than 3 kids, people act like, whoa. But back in the day, people had like 10, 13, you know, not even that long ago. People was having 10, 13 kids, no problem. Now it's like, you know, and for generations, people were reproducing, people were living to be old, they had great eyesight, you know, everything was perfect. And so people say that we're living longer now than we ever have. That's a lie. We're actually sicker now than we've ever been. And so the thing about this is that, okay, let's get into it. genetic modification. First of all, people want to protest Monsanto and all this stuff. Like, the thing that the public doesn't realize, there's nothing that you can do or that we can do, no matter how much you protest, no matter how much you try to change laws, there's nothing that we can do to stop the food industry from genetically modifying our food, okay? It's already a wrap. It's already too late. Because once they start doing that, genetics recombined. It's called recombinant DNA. So Mexico did not want U.S. GMO corn. But guess what? Mexico has U.S. GMO corn in their crops because, the birds and the bees, the birds pollinate. I mean, the bees pollinating and wind blowing stuff, and it moves. It's like if you have an outbreak of some type of virus in one part of the world, it will end up in another part of the world because it travels with people. It travels with the wind. And so when you start genetically modifying plants, that will travel and it recombines with other DNA. And then you have scientists, who are who are putting DNA from one species into another species, and then that GMO organism then reproduces with something else, and the DNA recombines in ways that we don't understand. Okay, scientists can't even study it. Only long-term studies would have to be done, but it's a complicated thing to study. And the few studies that have been done, I remember when I was in graduate school, this is the main thing that made me not want to be a scientist anymore, was we had to read about a scientist in Europe who had done it was some like potato protein or something called lectin. Let's say there was like lectin A and lectin B, and it was supposed to be, one of them was supposed to be a good herbicide, but it wasn't supposed to be toxic to humans. And so the scientists studied it, expecting to find that it would not be toxic to organisms, right? To humans, it wouldn't be toxic. And I remember what he found was whatever animals ate that, their like internal organs either like shrunk really, really small, or they were really, really big. Like it was messing with their internal organs. And he didn't even report this when he was he had been on the news, and they asked him about what he thought about GMO foods. And he said he does not think that humans should be guinea pigs for that. Like, he didn't speak about the results in his research because scientists, they get silenced. So he didn't even speak about that. He just said he does not think humans should be guinea pigs. And just because he said that, he came back to work. They had sealed his files, his computer. His whole research staff wasn't speaking to him anymore. And they weren't speaking to him, and he lost his job. And he was told if he said anything about this, that his wife would lose her pension, because his wife was also a scientist. And his name was smeared. They said that, they were saying that his research was unethical and that he lied. And as a scientist, not unethical, they were saying that he lied about his results or whatever. And as a scientist, if you get told that you were lying, that's the end of your career. There's like no coming back from that. As a scientist, if they get told that their research was flawed and they falsified something and they were lying, that's it for their career, So he was basically silenced and smeared. And if his wife said anything, she would lose her pension. And so what happened was, there was another scientist, and I don't know if it was an American scientist, but it was another scientist someplace else who recreated his studies and got the same thing. And that's how it kind of came out. And so I remember learning this and reading this stuff way back in 2003. So this is 16 years ago, but I remember this. And I remember just seeing I always wanted to tell people the truth. That's why I did not work at a hospital. I could have been a dietitian in a hospital. I didn't want to do that because I don't want a lot of people. I don't want to be a part of this system of lying. And so a lot of if you go to a registered dietitian, stuff like that, a lot of what they're telling you is completely false information. So anyhow, now the thing is, the food industry is incredibly powerful. They want to sell, like it's a big business. So they convinced Americans, don't eat butter, consume margarine. And what is margarine? Margarine is something that the food industry made. They took vegetable oil, which is really, really cheap, and they tried to make it into a butter-like substance. So in order to do that, they hydrogenated the oil, which makes it incredibly toxic. Whereas butter is so good for you. Butter is an essential fat. Like, you can't eat too much butter, particularly grass-fed butter from healthy cows. You can eat that shit all day, and it's so good for you. Like, it's not going to make you fat. That's not what makes you fat. Eating too much sugar and rancid vegetable oils is what makes people fat. That's what gives people a heart attack. That's what gives people cancer. It's not butter. It's not grass-fed butter from the farm. I'm telling you that, okay? Now, the thing is that the produce, they've been genetically modifying it since before people even knew what genetic modification was. People didn't even know about it. And so that's my issue too with the vegan community, when they're always like, oh, they treat the chicken so bad, they treat the cow so bad, they treat the pig so bad. They do. But the commercial food industry treats all organisms bad, including the plants. And it's actually worse for the plants because, like, at least with animals, okay, first of all, you can get chicken, pigs, and cows. You can get chicken, pork, and beef from a local farm. If you get it from a local farm, you don't have to get it from the commercial food industry. So if you get it from a local farm, you know that animal was outside getting sun, that animal was running around, the animal was eating what it's supposed to eat, and not being fed a whole bunch of toxic crap by the food industry and kept in these disgusting quarters, never getting outside air, never getting sunlight, never moving, being injected with antibiotics. That is not what happens when you get your meat from a farmer's market. But besides that, people can also eat goat, they can eat lamb, they can eat raccoons, they can eat possums, they can eat rabbits, they can eat deer, they can eat alligators. There's all kinds of animals that people eat besides chickens, pigs, and cows, right? So instead of saying, I'm just going to stop eating meat from the commercial food industry and find better sources of animal foods, instead of doing that, vegans are like, oh, I'm not eating any animal foods at all. And then they're over here eating all these damn plants that are GMO'd the fuck up, okay? Because it's almost with fruits and vegetables, you also want to try to get them from local farms. But that doesn't mean that GMO hasn't cross-pollinated into those crops. 1 second. So with food, let me see. Okay. Yes, Kerrygold butter is good. So with food, the other thing too is that different countries have different standards. Like Europe seems to be, and I've yet to go to Europe. I've never been to Europe, and I'm going to go to Europe this year, take a solo trip because I travel alone all the time. But Europe is the only part of the world where they still have strict standards about the food, okay? Because, like, I've never been to Africa either, but I know in Africa, of course, is a huge continent, so, it could be different in different countries and parts of countries. But from what I've heard from people, naturopathic doctors and people who've done work in Africa with the food, it's starting to happen there too. With the GMOs and eating processed stuff, the same stuff you see in America. I definitely know in the Caribbean, like anytime I've been to the Caribbean, Caribbean people always try to act like they eat so much better than Americans and that their food is so much fresher. But I've been to Haiti, I've been to Jamaica, I've been to Puerto Rico, I've been to Cuba 5 times. I've been to the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica several times. That's all. Yeah, for the Caribbean. And every time I've been in the Caribbean, the food is just the same or not worse. Like, it's easier for me to find good food in America than it is in the Caribbean. I remember being in Jamaica and Haiti. I've never seen so much damn soda in my life. Like, so much tropical fantasy pineapple soda. Like, you guys have pineapples. Why aren't you drinking pineapple juice? Nope, they're drinking pineapple soda with yellow dye in it. When I was in Haiti, I remember being so damn thirsty, and all I wanted was some coconut water. And every time we stopped someplace, and we were on these road trips, and it was so fucking hot, and I felt like I was going to die of dehydration. Every time we stopped, what happens? A bunch of people selling soda. I'm like, I don't fucking want soda. Like, it's too soda. Like, everybody had soda. And when I was in Port-au-Prince, I had never seen so much Wonder Bread. And then they worship Spam, like all this crap. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, you might find parts of Haiti, you might find parts of Jamaica where people don't eat that. But the same is true in America. Everybody in America doesn't eat that either. If you watch Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, Anthony Bourdain's show was great. So for those of you who don't know about Anthony, you might not know about him since he died. I highly suggest watching a lot of his shows. Because one thing about his shows, he never spoke about, I liked it because I liked the knowledge I learned about traditional nutrition. He never spoke about that. But what you saw, though, is like everywhere he went, people made blood sausage. It seemed like everywhere he went, people ate pork, except for the Muslim countries. Like, they didn't eat it in India. Anywhere people were Muslim, there was no pork. But most of the world, when he went someplace, pork. They were making blood sausage. They were making eating organ meats and using broths, and they eat what's locally around them. So you would see this common thread. But even when he would be in parts of the U.S., that he'd be in Virginia, he could be in Texas. I remember him being in Virginia, and there was some man that ate pigeons, and he was, like hunted pigeons and ate pigeons. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of things that I had professors at Brooklyn College who her and her husband raised their own goats and took it to slaughter. It was a goat or lamb. It was one of them. It might have been a goat. In Brooklyn, I had another professor at Columbia who she lived upstate New York, not that far, and she used to eat roadkill. Like, I'm not about that life, but she did, right? And she only got her animals and her food she only grew her own produce, and she got her animal foods from a farm down the street. And so instead of like teaching people how to get better sources of food, you have this thing where it's like, oh, I'm not going to eat, all animal foods are bad. And, blah, 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 blah. And it's like the vegan community never addresses the GMO issue, right? Because if we were to really address the GMO issue, there would really be an argument. If I wanted to use half-truths and propagandas and be dramatic the way the vegan community is, then I would say, because the vegan community says, okay, the food industry mistreats the chickens, the pigs, and the cows. Okay, so that's their reasoning to eat no more animal foods. Okay, well, I could say that all the fruits and vegetables, all these plants are GMO'd, and they've been GMO'd for 20 plus years. And even when you think you're growing your own shit, that stuff is still cross-pollinated into your own individual crops. It's so easy. So should I go on a campaign to say we should eat no more plant food? Nothing. Everything from plants is toxic. We should eat no more plant food. That wouldn't make any sense. You know why? Because we're omnivores. Chickens, pigs, and humans are omnivores. That means we can eat damn near anything, and we can eat a wide variety of things. But it means that we also need plants and animals. Some animals only eat one thing. Like cows only eat grass. Cows aren't supposed to be eating trees, leaves, or any animal foods, or they're not supposed to be eating broccoli. They're just supposed to be eating grass. So there's certain animals that just eat like one thing. Humans, pigs, and chickens have the ability to eat a lot of different things, but we need plants and animal foods. So the dangers of GMOs, like you can tell, like sometimes things just look genetically modified. Like first of all, if something is seedless, like you got seedless watermelon, seedless grapes, automatic clue that it's GMO. If something looks mega huge, like these huge ass bananas or huge ass apples, that's not how they look in nature. And I remember when I started going to the farmer's market in graduate school, New York is the big apple. We grow lots of really good apples, like really good. And so many different species. Oh yes, that's the other thing about GMO. So many different species of apples in New York State. But yet, if you go to like, now they're starting to change, but back then, if you went to the supermarket, all the apples in New York were from Washington State. So it's like, why are you shipping apples from Washington State across the country to New York when we grow tons of tasty apples in our own state? And the problem with that is that when you're shipping produce from one part of the world to another and it's traveling that far distance, that means they pick the produce when it's not ripe. So when you pick something when it's not ripe, that means the nutritional content is way lower than it should be. Then it takes a couple of weeks to get over here. Then they store it for how many weeks and months before they even put it out to sell it to you. So then when they do, they treat it with ethylene gas, which helps to hurry up and kind of ripen it for you to see and make you think that, and that shit has been there for months, which means the nutritional value has severely depleted. So unless you're getting your produce fresh from like a farmer's market, because if you go to a farmer's market, that means that that apple was probably picked yesterday or like the day before yesterday. So it is ripe. The nutritional value is higher. And I remember when I started eating apples from the farmer's market, I remember one time biting into an apple and a worm popped out, and the shit almost made me have a heart attack. And I've seen that in commercials, cartoons, like apples, worms come out of an apple. We've all seen that. I've seen it on TV. I never saw that in real life. And you know why? Because that was a real apple. That was a real apple and a ripe apple. You won't ever see a worm come out of an apple from the supermarket because that shit has been irradiated, which means they put radiation on the fruit and vegetables to kill all the microorganisms, which is not good. It's GMO'd, and a lot of what they say is that animals don't eat GMO shit. Like animals are smart enough, unlike humans. Humans, we think we're so smart, but we can't tell what's GMO, what's not. Animals can tell. A lot of them will not eat GMO stuff at all. Okay, Then they put waxes all over the produce that you cannot wash off. It's like almost impossible to wash that shit off, and it's not good. Then it's old. I mean, so there's so many things wrong with that. This is the reason why you want to do your best to get your produce from a farmer's market. And just all your food, you want to get local sources. But with the GMOs, it's killed a lot of species, right? It's killed, the GMOs have killed a lot of species. So like, there's tons of different species of grapes and tons of different species of apples and oranges, and you got orange lemons and, you know, like the biodiversity. Now we think, oh, a lemon is yellow, a lime is green, watermelon is red. When no, there's yellow watermelon. I've seen it in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? Like there are, every tomato is not red. We got green tomatoes, you know, like there's a variety, you know, of you know, you got purple potatoes, you know, like this. For us to think that all these, you know, fruits and vegetables are just one color or just look one way. I remember the first time I ever had Concord grapes. I was also in graduate school and I got it from the farmer's market because New York grows them and they're so yummy, which is another thing. When the Caribbean people think they have the best fruit, Caribbean fruit is cool, is good, but I like a lot of the fruit that we have here up north, like berries. I love berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, really good apples, really good pears, really good grapes. That stuff doesn't grow in the Caribbean, right? So the thing is that the first time I had only had one species of grape my entire life. I eat these Concord grapes. I was telling my mom about them. I'm like, oh my God, they taste like candy. I was telling my mom about these grapes that I had never had before. My mom saw them. She was like, oh, those grew in my yard, my backyard as a kid growing up. And my mom is from Western Pennsylvania, like in the middle of nowhere, close to Ohio, like in between Pittsburgh and Ohio. And she had them in her backyard, you know, and I had never seen them before. So the thing is that, and I hardly ever see Concord grapes. I don't really see them that much. And in California is an environmental wasteland, okay? I have gone between LA and the Bay several times, and you know, by bus or whatever. And it's like when you're going, you see like the cows outside eating grass, getting sunlight. The cows are very healthy, right? And then you also see miles and miles and miles of the same species of orange or the same species or whatever fruit or vegetable being grown for miles and miles and miles. That actually causes the other strains of that orange, the other, you know, to go extinct. So there's many different variations in different fruits and vegetables that have gone extinct due to GMO and monocropping. Monocropping is when which is what the commercial food industry does. They will grow miles and miles and miles of the same species of one particular plant. And that destroys biodiversity. Okay, so on top of the monocropping issue, and the GMO issue and people wanting things look so perfect and pretty. It's another thing with the GMO. They can make everything look so perfect and pretty, whereas like real fruits and vegetables have flaws. You know, they might have a little bumps and imperfections, so-called imperfections, right? And people want everything to look perfect and this and that. So all that GMO. And the thing is that I remember when I was in graduate school reading some studies about how like with some of the GMO, like it's something that's hard to study because nobody knows how when you put genes places they shouldn't be. I just say that nature controls for itself. When we start trying to interfere with nature, that's when it backfires. It always backfires. So if you're taking like genes from one species and putting it into another, you don't know what that effect is going to have on the person or the thing that eats that genetically modified organism, because the DNA is called recombinant DNA. It's always breaking off and recombining, breaking off and recombining. So if you put genes in an organism that came from another organism that's not supposed to be there, you don't know how that recombines. And then when somebody eats it, it recombines with their DNA. And so to do a study to find out how that affects people is almost impossible. And there's all kinds of weird things. Like as a practitioner, I've had so many clients that have had weird things going on, things that you can't explain, just weird shit. A lot of that could be from genetically modified food, and there's no way to really trace that. But if you had read the studies, like if you read this book, and I haven't read this whole book. This book is, how many is this? This is 500 pages or some shit of this book, okay? that I was just talking about 500 pages. Let's just open it up. Let's just open it up to a random page and let me read something to you. Oh, look, I just opened up to a random page. I like this. So what I opened it up to, it says the impact of illusion. I hope you guys can hear me. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. Oh, yes, we should get fruits and vegetables when they're in season. That's another thing. That's another thing with being a vegan. You want to live in Chicago and New York and Canada and every place where it's cold. And I could go to the supermarket right now and I could find bananas and avocados and pineapples, mangoes. Besides the fact that that doesn't even come from this local area, it's not in season either. You know what I'm saying? So we need to be eating produce that's in season and local. Okay. So I can't wait. I'm going to Colombia next week, and I can't wait to eat the tropical fruits in the tropics. I prefer to eat them there than here. Okay, so the impact of illusion, right? Despite the dearth of data and the misgivings of many experts, the illusion that all GMOs, even robust plants and microbes destined for farmers' fields, have been scientifically determined to be safe, was so artfully instilled that it largely took hold, and it became big capital on Capitol Hill. Most legislators now believed they had an even stronger basis for relaxing regulation of the biotechnology industry and instead focusing on how to foster its growth and attain U.S. dominance of the field, thereby boosting the nation's economy. Okay? This dovetailed with the agenda of the Reagan administration, which came to power in January 1981. That's the year I was born, 1981. So you see, they've been fucking with the food for a long time. People didn't start realizing that shit to the early 2000s. And people act like they discovered something. Oh, we're gonna protest Monsanto. You're too fucking late. You're too late. Okay, the general public doesn't know what scientists are doing. The government doesn't know what science. Nobody can stop scientists. Okay, you can't. Okay, so under President Reagan, the federal executive branch became committed to promoting industry and substantially freezing it from regulatory restrictions, and grew inherently hostile toward regulation. This attitude became more prevalent within Congress as well, since the Republicans had won control of the Senate in the election that brought Reagan to the White House, increasing the number of legislators who were ideologically opposed to regulation in general. Accordingly, within both the executive and legislative branches, attempts to regulate GMOs were increasingly regarded as unnecessary and unwelcome. Okay, this is 1981. Okay, so they haven't been regulating, and honestly, I see if I feel like my generation has some health issues. With younger people, what I'm starting to notice, and I was talking to a friend of mine, like people were talking about, girls looking old for their age. I feel that maybe that was true when I was coming up, right? But what I see now is, because I live by Loyola and Northwestern in Chicago, and by Columbia University in New York, and and I was watching even a documentary on Netflix. On the Bethune-Cookman College marching band, right? Which I love black marching bands down south. I remember looking at that documentary and I'm like, these people, they look like kids. Like when we were in college, we looked older than this. They looked like they all had horrible skin. Like you're not going through puberty anymore. You should not have all these pimples. First of all, if you have a bunch of pimples and stuff going on with your skin, you're not healthy. I mean, like your gut is out of whack. Like your microbes, everything. I have videos where I talk about that, but bad skin is a indication of what's going on inside your gut. Okay, but they're after puberty and like they looked like they didn't finish developing, and that's what I see when I'm over here by Loyola in Chicago. All these college students, they don't look like college students to me. Some of them look like they're in junior high. Like they don't even look like high school students to me. Not how high school students look when I was in high school. And I was talking to a friend of mine in DC. And he was by the University of Maryland, and he said the same thing. And I'm like, a lot of this generation now that's coming up, they look underdeveloped, actually. Like they look younger than they should, a lot of them. If anybody has noticed that, please, like, you could write that comment, because I've definitely noticed that. And just more health problems, more people with allergies, bad eyesight. I had bad eyesight, but like all of that stuff is just becoming more and more common. Even stuff like vitiligo, which back in the day, like Michael Jackson was the only person that had that. Nobody even heard of it. Now mad people have vitiligo. Mad people got lupus. Like I remember lupus was something that you hardly ever heard of. Lupus is everywhere now, And so like after years and years and years of eating this crap is when you start to see the results. And that's what I say about vegans. Is that you could be decided to become, I've been a vegan for 2 years, I feel great. I've been a vegan for 5 years, I feel great. I've been a vegan for 10 years, I feel great. Okay, so what happens? Let's see what happens over time. Only time will tell. When it's a very recent thing where you see people who are being raised as a vegan from the time that they were in the womb. If you look at anybody who is like 50 and over, nobody was a vegan from the time they were in the womb. So they might have done that as an adult. But babies and children are rapidly developing. So it's extremely dangerous. And to me, it's child abuse, actually, to be raising a kid on a vegan diet, because there's essential nutrients that kids need in their developmental years, that if you deprive them of that and you mess your child up and they grow up and they have serious issues, it's your fault. And you only have yourself to blame for that. And it's too late to fix, because the developmental years are so important. Okay, you can't go back to that. That's when you set your foundation. So, and you're experimenting. I don't experiment. I'm not experimenting with my health. I'm not experimenting with the health of my clients who trust me for advice. Like I'm not doing that. I do what I know has worked. And we can look back and see what has worked. We can look back and see what did populations who lived long for generations and reproduce over and over again for generations, what did they eat? I look at my friends. I have African friends who grew up in Cameroon, who grew up in Nigeria, who are perfectly formed, beautiful physiques, like thick, strong bones, perfect bodies. I mean, their facial structure, everything. Eyesight is perfect. What did you eat? They all ate a bunch of organ meats. One of my Nigerian friends was telling me at every meal, they have like a few different organ meats, different textures of organ meats, I know Africans who grew up consuming milk as well. I know Africans, I've met Senegalese who consume raw milk. I have a Nigerian friend in New York who consume raw milk. And so when people say, Africans can't consume milk, that's not true. There's a lot of Africans that drink raw milk. And I have a video about raw milk on my YouTube page, so definitely check it out. I did this video 7 years ago, actually. I probably need to do another one. And so, yeah, like basically this GMO stuff is too late. Like you don't waste your time trying to protest, because no one's going to stop these big businesses. No individual is going to stop that shit. The best thing that you can do is paying attention to how it affects how in politics, but really paying attention to your food sources, analyzing your food sources, where you get your food from. And then when you're in different parts of the world, you might decide to eat different things. Like what I eat depends on where I am. Like seafood is really good for you, but seafood can be very toxic because the water is so polluted. But there's so much that we get from seafood. So seafood is still good to include in your diet if you can. But there's certain fish that are highly toxic, and there's certain fish that are not. Like eating tilapia is fucking garbage. You might as well, if you're going to eat tilapia, you might as well go dig in the garbage and just eat that, okay? People talk about pork, but tilapia, what the fuck is tilapia? Like, what culture eats that? Like now, all of a sudden, you see tilapia I could be in New York and I see tilapia on in Senegalese Harlem, they'll have it on the menu in a Senegalese restaurant. I'll see it on a Mexican menu. Mexicans didn't eat tilapia. Senegalese people weren't fucking eating tilapia. Like they just add that shit on the menu because they're over here. But those weren't traditional foods. So what culture traditionally ate tilapia? I don't know. But I could tell you what culture traditionally ate pork, and it was like damn near everybody, right? So it's and I'm gonna do a whole other video about pork. I've done one in the past, but that YouTube page got deleted. But I'm gonna do another one on that topic, and I might even do it today. But we have to be smart, and a lot of what I do with my clients, I educate, and this is what I try to do on YouTube, to give you guys the tools to be able to analyze foods on your own, because you guys have no idea how much you're being tricked. No idea. And this is what I try to constantly expose. This is why you should follow me on Instagram too, because on Instagram, a lot of times I'll take pictures of certain things that you might think is fine, that you might think is good, and I will show you the ingredients, the problems with it, how it's made. The food industry is extremely tricky. So if you don't understand how to analyze, that's the thing that's important. Not for someone to give you a food plan. People ask me, do you give food plans? No, I teach people so that they know how to feed themselves, and they know how to analyze what it is that they're consuming, and they understand what it is that they need. So if I were, like in Cuba, pigs rule, okay? That's all they seem to eat in Cuba is pork, okay? Try to find something else, you'll be hard-pressed, okay? And so you could be someplace like you're eating some Caribbean pigs that are outside eating coconuts and stuff, and now their pig meat is very high in lauric acid and MCT fats, which are very good for you, very good for your immune system, helps you to burn fat and stuff like that. Or you could be in Europe and there's a raw milk machine somewhere, and you decide to consume raw milk because this is coming from grass-fed cows. I get raw milk in Chicago. I'm going to go do it later today. I go to an Amish farm. An Amish market in Chicago. And this is one thing I like about Philly. I'm not a big fan of Philly, no offense. I'm not a big fan of it. But the one thing I like about Philly is the fact there's a lot of Amish people in Pennsylvania, and you could get raw milk in the hood in Philly. Like, you could be in an area where you wouldn't even think there was anything healthy, and there's a whole bunch of raw milk. You get off the Greyhound bus and run into Reading Terminal. Right across the street, you can find raw milk with the Amish are selling. Okay, so you can, depending on, in California is the only state where raw milk is, not the only state. Last time I checked, it was Connecticut, New Mexico, and California were the only states where you could sell raw milk in the store. So in California, I know, like, I can go to Sprouts and certain stores I can go to and just grab some raw milk, right? So, like, when I eat, and I love ice cream, but I don't eat ice cream when I was in Costa Rica. I'm not a fan of Costa Rica like that. People love Costa Rica. I've been to Costa Rica several times. I've been all over the country. I think it's boring. I think it's pretty, but I think it's boring. But I also think that the food, I study food systems. The food system in Costa Rica is not like people think. There's a lot of GMOs in Costa Rica. I remember years ago somebody telling me that you can't find pineapple in Costa Rica that's not GMO. Okay? Costa Ricans telling me that. They got all the dole plantations and stuff like that. And then you can't find, I remember I couldn't find grass-fed butter. I could really find butter in Cuba. They love to cook with, I love the word mantequilla. Mantequilla, that's butter in Spanish. They love to cook with margarine, and you can't just go to a store and be like, I'm going to buy some butter. You can't do that in Cuba, So, which is one of the many reasons why I wouldn't want to live there, because I need to have choices. There's a lot of great things about Cuba, but I need to have choices so I can get good quality food. I can't live someplace where margarine is the only thing I can eat. Or ice cream, like in Costa Rica, last time I haven't been to Costa Rica in a few years, but I know that if I go too many days without ice cream, I'm in a bad mood. Like, especially if I've been active. But that shit, it's like, if I have an addiction to anything, it might be ice cream. Like, my body needs it. Especially when I've been working out intensely, it's like my muscles are like, it doesn't matter how much food I eat. I need ice cream to finish that shit off. It's like my muscles are like, ice cream. Okay. So, but I only eat good quality ice cream, which is the thing that I love about California, is that California is the ice cream capital. There's so many great artisanal ice cream places in California. But then, like, I could be in Costa Rica, and the ice cream at the time, they had this one ice cream brand called Tres Árboles, which is 3 trees ice cream or something like that. And it just had so many chemicals in it. And I wouldn't eat that shit. I'm not eating ice cream. I'm not eating ice cream that has dyes and chemicals and guar gum and xanthan gum. I'm not eating that. So if I'm in a place where that's all I have, then I'm not eating ice cream. So instead of people saying completely, I'm just going to not eat that at all, you can shift what you eat when you're in different places. If you don't want to eat pork in America, okay, but to say that pork is just bad completely is false. But the main thing is the GMO thing, definitely, check out these books. So, I haven't looked at this book in a long time. I'm just going to open up a random page in this book and let's see. Okay, let me look at some of these comments. So somebody on YouTube, thank you for sharing. I'm blind, so I have to get up. Hold on, let me use my glasses. Please, my glasses are all jacked up and crooked, so don't laugh. Okay, so somebody said, My Somali father told me to drink milk. Hold on a minute. My Somali father told me to drink milk when I was bound up. He drinks milk all the time. Total opposite from my African American side of the family. There we go. There we go. And you know what? I wish more Africans, because I'm always wondering this, like what Africans think about what Afro-Americans say about Africans and what they eat. Because I've seen more people, including the very fraudulent Dr. Africa, which I won't call him Dr. Africa because he's not a doctor. Layla Africa, Layla or Laila, whatever his name is. That dude's a fraud, first of all. He looks so skinny and ashy. He doesn't look strong. I think I could kick his ass down some stairs. Like that's not how a man's supposed to be, right? But he's on that vegan stuff and he be talking about what Africans eat. You got black people over here that's supposed to be so-called Afrocentric. They want to wear, little head wraps and the dashikis and the African garb, and then they're on some vegan shit. But Africans aren't vegans. Nowhere in Africa. I'm like, do you guys ever speak to Africans? Do you have African friends? Have you ever gone to their house to eat? Because nobody's going to feed you a vegan meal. No, you're not going to go to a village in Africa. And then the black people from over here who happen to take a trip to Africa and they still be in that vegan shit. It's like, you don't have common sense. You're in Africa. You're in the motherland. And you see beautiful black people who are well-formed. They're not eating a fucking vegan diet. So what makes you think that's in here? So, again, there's a lot of myths. And a lot of people don't do adequate research. They just believe whatever they're being told, There's a lot of stuff that's wrong that we're being told. Raw milk is not bad. And to anybody, any other Africans that grew up consuming raw milk, please share that. Write that on my thing. And because we learn from sharing, we learn from stories. So I'm going to open up a random page in food politics, right? And I'm going to see just what I open it up to and read it to you. It's random. Oh yeah, the other thing about this, which is crazy, is about the schools. What they have done to affect schools, the food industry. So I just opened this up to a random page. I'm just going to read this to you real quick. Sorry, I'm getting nerdy, but you got to research, right? So it says, the well-financed promotion in schools of soft drinks and other foods of poor nutritional quality directly undermines federal efforts to improve the dietary intake of children and to reduce rates of childhood obesity. Even though colleges and now entire cities, such as Huntington Beach, California, have become advertising vehicles for soft drink companies, elementary and secondary school students surely deserve some protection against commercial interests that contribute to poor nutrition outside of school as well as within. Soft drinks, of course, constitute just one example of industry marketing to children. But the health effects of this product are becoming increasingly well documented. Thus, a good starting place for nutrition advocacy for children is to encourage consumption of water, juices, and low-fat milk, but to discourage consumption of sodas and sweetened fruit drinks, except as occasional desserts. Okay, so I don't agree with this. Low-fat dairy is not good for children. Okay, low-fat dairy is not good for anybody. So that's I don't agree with that. In what must be considered a courageous move in this direction, the USDA braved the wrath of the soft drink industry when it pictured soda pop at the tip of its 1999 food guide pyramid for children aged 2 to 6. Okay, so I forgot about how this book talks a lot about how the food industry is marketed to children and parents just follow what their children want. But I don't ever remember the USDA food guide pyramid putting soda at the tip of the 1999 food guide pyramid for children. That's crazy. Soda doesn't need to be in anybody's food guide pyramid. And so, yeah, this is so much about how they target children. Okay, so this is so much politics in this book. This is talking about Chiquita Banana. And this is crazy. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna put this book down. But if you see this, can you see this? Can you guys see this? You can see this good picture of the little black boy, right? Now, what this says, it says lactogen on top of here. This little black boy, it says lactogen. And it says, is the very best milk for your baby. Advertisements like this 1975 example from South Africa promoted the use of infant formulas, but also led to an international boycott of products made by Nestle Corporation. Like, I'm just going to put this down because there's too much in here. But I remember reading this book in 2003. And this book is also a fat book. And it just talks about all the politics behind these food companies and what we're being told. Another really good book that is essential is Real Food. This book is written by Nina Plank, Real Food. I don't know if you can see it with the light. This book, What to Eat and Why. Now, the reason why this book is good, and this is even a good book to start with if you don't want to read the longer nerdy books, this is an essential book everybody should have, because what she does a good job of doing is taking the research the research that says that cholesterol is bad for you, the research that says that animal fats is bad for you, the research that says saturated fat is bad for you. She takes that research and she shows you the politics behind that research and why it's incorrect, why it was twisted, like twisted truth, right? She talks about that. She actually breaks it down and shows you. And I love that because she does a very good job of doing it. She does it in a way where you don't have to be all scientific and nerdy to understand what she's saying. And so these are the things that's worth reading. Not Layla Africa's African holistic health bullshit. Not that stuff, okay? And it's time to like look at real science. And I'm always going to bring books and studies and things to back up what it is that I'm trying to get you to understand. And just to end this conversation, the thing about GMOs that we just don't know how it affects us. You know, we don't know the long-term effects of it. So the best thing that you can do is do your very best to get local sources of food, do your very best to eat unprocessed food, and do your very best to like pray over the shit. Like, you know, I don't know, but this is what it is. So genetically modified foods can be incredibly dangerous though. Okay, and just remember that now they want to GMO, they want to mess with the animals. People are like, oh no, I'm not eating meat anymore because they're cloning meat. Well, you know what? They've been doing more than cloning fruits and vegetables. They've been doing more than that. They've been really fucking with the DNA of plants for like 40 years, okay, or more. So just understand that. All right, guys, thank you for listening. If you learned something from this video, please share it, please like it, please subscribe to me on YouTube, The Body Scientist 81, and then on Instagram, _body_scientist. And have a good day. Bye, people.